Hi everyone, how are we doing? Welcome to our Employability Skills workshop today with Helen. It's an absolute honour to have her to do this workshop for us today, so thank you very much. My name's Charlie. I work on the Attain project in High Wycombe, and Helen is one of our amazing mentors, and she's going to be going through this presentation with you today on some employability skills. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to pass over to Helen, and I'm hoping that Zoom allows to see Helen now, because I think you can only see me. But I'll pass over to Helen. If anyone has any questions, please do, when you're watching it live, please do put it in the chat. And if you have any questions and you're not watching it live, we'll be able to work with your mentor or your hub coordinator to help you out. So I'm going to pass over to Helen and we'll go from here. So welcome, Helen.
Thank you very much. Welcome everybody. So I'll just tell you a little bit about myself before we start, and really I suppose why I can talk to you today about employability skills. So my name's Helen, as Charlie said. I'm one of the mentors in the High Wycombe area. I'm a single mother with two children. They're 9 and 11 years old. I have previously run my own business, so I had a food retail business. So we had a cafe, we did catering events, we had a shop and ran various events at the premises as well. So that involved me employing people in all sorts of different roles, from waitresses, chefs, marketing managers, all sorts of different positions. So I've sat on the side of the table that is employing people, as well as on the side of the table wanting to be employed. So I've worked in all sorts of different businesses, from international courier to HMRC, the tax office, the NHS, Fujitsu, Hitachi Capital. These are some quite well-known names. And so obviously I have been through the process of applying for jobs and having interviews more times than I can possibly count. So hopefully I can bring some of my experience to share with you today. Some of the things that I found work really well, some of the questions that you might get asked, and how you might be able to answer some of those, some of the things to be thinking about when you're planning that. So I'm currently a senior project manager in an educational research charity, currently working from home, but hopefully not for too much longer. And I'm also planning to start a coaching business later this year. So quite a varied career in all sorts of different areas, and I'm really happy for you to get in touch with me through Charlie to ask any further questions or for any further support that you might want. So please do make use of that if that's going to be helpful for you. So really broken this down into the top 8 skills that employers are looking for. So this really goes across any type of job that you might be looking at. But just to break those down, and I'll go into a lot more detail on each one of those. Well, I say a lot more detail, you know, we've got a fairly limited time to talk about this today, but I'll go into more detail on each of these 8 areas. And so the 8 areas we're going to look at communication, self-management, teamwork, problem solving, initiative and enterprise, learning, organising and planning, and technology. And don't be scared or worried about any of those. If you think, oh my goodness, technology, I can't do technology at all, don't worry, we're going to go into those each in more detail and start to pick up some of the areas where you may have some experience or what you can do to answer those questions. So when we think about communication, something I was taught ages ago was I was given 1 mouth and 2 ears, and you should use them in that ratio. So listen twice as much as you talk. Difficult sometimes for people like me who like to talk, but if we try and do that, then we're understanding better and we can formulate our ideas and get those out in a very structured communication method. So it's very important to speak clearly and directly. And I know nerves come into play when we're in an interview, when we might want to sort of rush through, or our ideas might not be kind of fully formed, but really try to just slow down a bit and speak very clearly and directly to the person that you're talking to. Communication obviously comes in talking, it could be writing as well. So think about if you're writing a letter, who are you writing to, and address the needs of that person. We've got things around using numbers. So, if you haven't already done it, it's great to try and get your maths GCSE or an equivalent to that, because that's a really helpful way to be able to talk to your employers as well. Using networks. So we've got social networks and any other networks like this network, where you've got people with different experiences who you can draw on those experiences to help you move forwards. I'll just jump around over these, but about empathizing with people. And I'll give you some examples of this. So when someone's talking to you, you can use what's called active listening and make some, sure, yeah, I get that, okay, some indication to the person who's talking to you that you've taken on board what they're saying and you've heard it, you've understood it. Another good way to do that as well is to summarize back what's been said to you. So, okay, I get that. What you want me to do is this. And that really gives confidence to the person talking to you that you've understood, you've taken on board the message, and you're now going to give them some information back. So I completely understand your point of view. I also believe about this. And have you ever considered that? And not in an aggressive way in any way, but just building an argument and building a conversation with someone. So yeah, that's a really strong thing that every employer is going to look for, that you can communicate with other people effectively, be that your colleagues, be it your managers, be it your customers. So something to really have a look at and try that active listening that I was talking about. So the next area that we're going to look at is self-management. So this is about you having a personal vision and goals. The classic question that you'll almost always be asked at an interview. So where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? I would recommend you don't do what my sister did and say, oh, I'd like to have your job, because that doesn't go down so well. But do have a think about, what do you realistically think from the job that you're looking to get now? Where do you think you could realistically get to in 5 years? Be ambitious, of course, go for it, but don't say, I'm going to be running the company in 5 years' time if you're going for an entry-level position. Try and get that balance between ambition and realism. But be confident around what you want to do. And if you don't know, say, I want to explore some different options. I really love this company because you can give me opportunities in this area and that area. And so I'm hoping that will help give me some ideas and direction for where I want to go in the future. But it's your responsibility. Don't turn around and say, well, you tell me what I'm going to be doing in 5 years' time. Have your own ideas about that and then really see what you can do to get to that place. Right, so the next area looking at is teamwork. So this, in almost every job that you'd be looking at, you'd be working with other people. So this is about how the employer wants to understand, how well will you contribute to productive working relationships? Can you make sure that this team is going to get things done? Can you work with people who are different ages, different genders, races, religions, political beliefs? Put all that aside and actually come together for the purpose of the job at hand. Understand that everyone has a different job within the team, and we actually all come together to make something happen. Some people are really good at some things, others are good at other things. So can we get all the strengths of everybody together so that we can do whatever it is that we want to be doing? So another favourite question of employers is, you know, tell me about a time when you've worked in a team and what was your role within that. So you might be thinking, oh gosh, I can't think of any examples of that. You know, what am I going to use? So think about projects that you might have done at school, or any sports clubs that you were involved in, or after school clubs like guides or, you know, scouts, anything like that. And then think about an example of where you might have done something and what you did, how that made a difference to the outcome. So like I said, my son's only 11, but they were building spaghetti towers at school the other day. So this is you know, it may sound like a silly example, but it's the sort of thing where you work out what each person in the team is doing, and he could then say, right, my job was to make the strongest shape so that we could make the tallest tower. And so because I recommended we were going to use this shape, we managed to get our tower to a certain height. And so don't write off what might seem to you initially to be a silly example, because they all show how you work with other people, how you overcome problems, and we're going to come on to those a bit more in a minute, but how you bring your strengths into a team so that you can achieve an objective at the end of the day. So just have a think about it. Like I say, if you're stuck for ideas, I'm really happy to talk to you or have a text conversation or something to try and pull out some of those things that you might have done in the past, to understand that and be able to be prepared for those conversations. Right, so the next one, this is quite a big area. This is around problem solving. This is a real favourite of employers. So basically what they want to know is that when you come in, you're not going to be asking for everything to be done for you. And actually you can show some independence, show your initiative, and think of different ways to, when things happen, how to resolve that. So that's about being creative. It's about having practical solutions. So we don't want to keep using the same examples. So if you used a sports team in your previous example around teamwork, then try and think of something different for this, because it shows a good range of your skills that way. And what do you do? How do you approach a problem? And this question could come to you in all sorts of different ways from the employer. So it could be, tell me when you had to change course at the last minute and what did you do? Tell me about a challenging time at work. What do you do when you're faced with a problem? So don't just talk about the problem and all the bad things about it, everything that went wrong and how it was a disaster and you know, you didn't know what to do and everyone was upset. You know, don't go into that, but think about the positive side of things. So what was the solution? So just a real outline of what happened, and then but really focus on the solution and what you did to make that happen, because that shows your skills in that area. And this is a really big thing that employers look for. Again, it doesn't matter what job you're going for. This applies for everything. Whether you're looking to be a waitress, you might have a problem with an angry customer, or you're looking for an office job, you know, what happens when the computers break down? How do you react to that? Or if you're looking to work on a farm, or any of these jobs will all require problem solving to some degree or other. Obviously, the problem will be different in each of them, but it's how you approach that. The next area, quite linked in fact, is around initiative and enterprise. So this is about looking at your creativity. And I always used to say, oh gosh, I'm not creative, thinking I'm not good at art. I can't do creativity. But actually, creativity is around your ideas and being able to think outside the box. It's quite a common phrase that gets bounced around, can you think outside the box? So again, think, if I had a tricky customer, what did I do to turn that situation around, rather than just doing the normal things or what everybody else would do? I actually had a really good idea, and I sat down with them and I had a cup of coffee and we talked through all the different ways of approaching it. And by the end of it, the tricky customer was actually really happy, and they went away telling everyone what a wonderful coffee shop we were. So be really creative. Don't think, oh no, I can't do that because that's, they won't like that. This is actually really thinking around all the possible ideas. Doesn't mean we're going to do all of them, but at least get all those ideas coming out. So show that you've got lots of ideas and plans and thoughts and different ways of looking at a problem. And that's a really strong hand to have when you're talking to an employer. So moving on to learning. So an employer wants to know that if they offer you the job, that you're not just going to stay the same person as you are today. You're going to keep getting better. And most employers will support you to do that to a greater or lesser extent. But they also want to know that you're absolutely committed to your own learning as well. So you could talk about that you've been on YouTube and you've learned a new skill, and it might not be entirely relevant, but it shows that you're really committed to being a better person in 5 years' time than you are today. It could be around connecting with people in a network. So people like me, people like Charlie, who've got skills that you don't currently have, but you're going, oh, I'd quite like to be like that person. I'm going to talk to them and take some of their skills so that I can keep getting better myself. Reading books or listening to books, or, we've got so many different ways that we can learn now, with all the, the internet available to us. And, one thing I think that lockdown has really helped with is by bringing learning online. So it's so much easier. You don't have to go and sit in a classroom for a day. You can learn sort of in and around everything else that you're doing, and learn whatever it is that takes your fancy. It's not important what you're learning. It's important that you're continuing to learn. Don't think, oh God, I can't, I'm done with school. I don't want to do that anymore. This is different now. This is about what you want to do, not about what you're told you have to do by teachers, etc. So just choose something that appeals to you and keep learning more skills. And the more skills you have, you never know when you're going to need those in the future. So sort of soak them all up is my advice. Right, so organising and planning. So this could be anything from, have you organised a group holiday with your friends, talked about planning meals and the budget, how much everyone needs to put in to pay for that. But it's really about breaking down the steps. I always start with the end. So what's the goal that I want to get to? And then what are all the things that I need to do in order to get to this kind of place that I want to be? This is really my bread and butter. My job is at the moment as a project manager. So my job day in, day out is about organising and planning. So looking at what do we need to do to make that happen? who do we need to do that, to make, who's got the right skills, how much money is it going to cost, how long is it going to take, and just keeping working round and round and round that process as things change, to be able to just analyse the information, see what needs to be done, set timelines, break down the big jobs into the smaller tasks, and think where one thing relies on another thing, and just to work through that. So this is a skill, again, that potential employers are going to be wanting to understand. And that's not to say that they expect you to plan and organise the whole business for them, of course not, but they want to know that if they ask you to do a job, that you can break that down and say, right, if I'm going to do that, I need to do A, B, C, and D. They need to want to see that you can understand how to break a task down and make sure that things happen when they're meant to happen. Right, so our 8th skill is around technology. So this really, now we need to have a range of basic IT skills. So if you don't have those skills, then that's a good place to start with your learning. And be willing to learn new skills. So, you know, you could say that I went on an Excel course, or I got a book of PowerPoint for Dummies or something like that, and I created an amazing presentation for one of my school projects, and the teacher thought it was brilliant and gave me a really good grade. But we really need to embrace all of the technologies that are available to us. And I'm sure most of you know far more about those than I do, because I know a certain amount of technology. I know what I need to do my job, but I would not describe myself as a technology expert. But I do know that that's an area that I need to keep working on and keep learning in. For all of these areas that I've talked about, when the potential employer that you're talking to asks you a question about that, there's a really helpful structure for thinking of how to return your response. So STAR. So first we think about the situation. So just describe the context of what you're talking about, not in a huge amount of detail, but just explain the context of your response. So T is for task. So if you list out the problem, and remember what I said, that to do this in a really positively framed way, not about all the bad things that you did and how you didn't have this and you should have done that, you know, but frame it in a positive way. Actions. So what did you do? And particularly what you did, even when we're talking within a team context, what were the roles that you took? Because the employer isn't employing your whole team, they're employing you. And the result is what happened. So what we love to see here is something that went wrong and how you've turned it around into something positive at the end. So just remember STAR: situation, task, actions, and results. And that's a really helpful way to structure your response so that you've got everything in there that the employer is looking for. Right, so last few minutes, I'm just going to move on to talk about some interview skills, because having done your application, had the call or the email from your potential employer saying that they want to talk to you, they want to get to know you a bit better, how can we really impress at interview? So these may sound like some really obvious things, but I'm telling you because I've seen them not be done. So make sure you allow plenty of time. If I'm going for an interview, I always think, gosh, if there's traffic jams, if I can't find anywhere to park my car, you know, how long is it going to take, and a bit longer besides, and then make sure that you're arriving 10 minutes early, because it's far better and it feels far more relaxing sort of start to your interview if you're not thinking, oh my goodness, I'm late, what are they going to think about me, you know, all those sorts of things. So really just give yourself way more time than you think you need. Better to be waiting around a bit than to be late. So dress according to the job that you're going for. So if you're going for a job in an office, wear what you think the other people in the office might be wearing. So not really short skirts or low cut tops, flip-flops, just very modest clothing, I think is fair to say. Use business language, so not necessarily how you would talk to your friends, but with sort of maybe think how you would have had a conversation with your teacher and use appropriate language like that. Definitely no swearing or anything like that. It's not, doesn't generally go down very well. Listen to the questions carefully. Remember, 2 ears, 1 mouth. So listen really hard. Think about what you're going to say before coming out with your answer. Keep eye contact. It shows honesty, and it builds trust between you and the person that you're talking to. So even though it can feel a bit scary sometimes, but really try, practice with other people, but try to keep eye contact, because I'm not sort of staring in people's eyes. That's a bit scary, but just generally looking into someone's eyes when you're giving a response. Try not to fidget. I'm awful. I've got a pencil here, like constantly in my hands, going round and round with a pencil. So I try to keep everything out of my way when I'm talking to someone in an interview situation, because I know that I just like to fidget with things in my hands. And the final one is to be confident, not cocky, but come across, be sure of yourself in your responses. You're talking about you know you better than anybody else, so be really confident about who you are, about your skills, about your strengths, and just fill the employer with confidence in you as well. If you're think about your language. If you're using lots of words like I think, I might, you're not quite sure, that say I am this, I do that. It gives a much stronger message that you know what you're talking about and that you're really sure in your skills. So we've talked a little bit about this, about being positive, being on time, clean and smartly dressed, big smile on your face. Show you are keen. So yeah, of course you're going to be nervous when you go to an interview. There's a lot riding on this, but actually some of the feedback that I've had from interviews in the past is it's been my enthusiasm for the job. I've done my homework. I've found out about this company that I'm going for an interview with, and I'm, not gushing, but really, I'm really, really interested to work for this company because whatever the reasons might be. But that enthusiasm comes across really well with employers. Be authentic to yourself. Don't kind of really overdo that, but just definitely show that you're enthusiastic. That can be anything from sitting up and sitting forward. If you're slumped in your chair, it looks like you're really not bothered about being there. So, sit up, don't lean against the back of the chair. Like I was saying, maintain eye contact with the person that you're speaking with. Smiling, your body language is really important in this because it says so much about you, even when, even apart from the words that's coming out of your mouth. We've talked about speaking confidently. Try not to race through your words too much, and have a few questions that you've already thought of that you want to ask. I usually think about 5 because some of them they might already answer as you're going through the interview. And it shows that you're keen if you've got something to ask back and not just questions about how much is the pay. So just, what's the training like at this organization? How do you support people in their personal development? I'm really interested in this role. How could you support me in, developing into that? So, where's the company going to be heading in the next few years? There's lots of different things that you can start to think about. And if you do some reading up on the company, look at their website, you know, it's going to hopefully start to prompt some ideas about why you're interested in going for an interview with them, and some things that you might want to ask when you're in your interview. Make sure your mobile is turned off, not just on vibrate, because it's not really a very good look in the middle of the interview if it goes off. We've talked about making sure that we're on time. So walk, talk and look the part, you know, assume that you already have this job. This is your job, you know, and you're just walking around the office, you're showing people what you're going to be doing, or you're walking around the cafe that you might be working in, or the farm that you might be working on, the building site, wherever you're going to be working. But imagine, you know, I've got this job, this is mine. And have that confidence as you're walking around with your interviewer. Think about that question. Tell me about yourself, because you know they're going to start with that question. So have a preparation. You know, imagine you're stuck in a lift and it takes, I don't know, 2 minutes or something to go in the lift from the bottom to the top floor. What are you going to tell the person that you're in there about yourself? What are those, you know, focus on the good things, focus on your skills, your talents, your experience, and really bring those out in your 1 minute pitch about yourself. Employers will often ask, you know, what's one of your weaknesses, but try to kind of prepare that answer around something that can be framed into a positive as well. And focus on your skills. Obviously the subject of money will come up, it has to come up, but don't start with that. Wait to sort of build up to that, so that comes nearer the end of the interview. And then after you've finished, it's always a really nice touch just to drop the person an email if you've got their email address, or something similar to that, and just say how lovely it was to meet you today. I really enjoyed having our conversation, and I look forward to hearing from you on a day that whenever you've agreed that you're going to hear back. Don't take to social media. Employers are looking at social media, looking at your profiles. So just be very conscious about what's there. You know, is that the right image that you want a potential employer to see? Don't start chattering about your interview via social or via public social media anyway. And yeah, then main thing is you've got all the skills, you've got the confidence, and just enjoy it. And the more you enjoy it, the more relaxed you'll be, and the more it will just flow nicely, and you will amaze yourself, and you'll be finding jobs left, right and centre before you know it. So that's us. Are there any questions, Charlie?
There's a couple of questions, and you kind of touched on them, but I'm going to ask you them again. Also, if anyone is watching live, you can put a chat in the chat. You will need to log in, and you can ask any questions. The amazing thing about using this recording this is that there's so much great content, Helen, there, so thank you.
Pleasure.
And that you can easily go back and pause it on the slides that you think are going to be really useful to you. So one of the questions, and it's quite a broad question that's come through, is about how to be more confident. And I didn't know whether you had any thoughts on that, on things on how to be more confident. And
you might laugh at some of my suggestions here, but
it's all personal, right? It's all personal to each individual.
Absolutely, of course. One of the things that I quite often do is when you get when you're not confident, one of the first things that happens is all the air goes out of your lungs, and so you get really sort of breathy, and that's why you talk fast. And so I try to do some sort of big arm, it's not in the middle of the office or anything like that, but, you know, maybe in my car before it starts, we'll go to the bathroom, just some big arm movements just to fill my lungs with air. And I'm a great believer in getting some positive messages into my head. So I'll start saying things like, I'm the best qualified person for this job, and this job's got my name all over it. And I start really believing that this is my job, I'm going to get it, filling myself up, making sure posture-wise you've got your shoulders back and your chest open, your head, your chin up, just getting everything. Like if you're like this, your confidence kind of dips down as well. So be open, sort of be proud of who you are, be proud of everything that you've done previously, and be excited to share that with someone, because this is kind of the next step on your journey, and it's great to be able to have that conversation. If you're in an interview, they've liked something that they've seen on paper, so be confident. There's no reason not to be confident. You've got nothing to lose because it's not your job at the moment, so just kind of go out there and show yourself all the best parts of yourself.
I think that's really good advice. That's really, really good advice. One of the other things that I was going to ask you is about asking questions in an interview. And would you recommend writing them down before?
Oh yeah, certainly you can do. It depends, if you remember them, that's great. But I personally prefer to write a few things down because, it's more than acceptable to take a notepad or something in with you. But I know my brain would suddenly go blank and they say, right, so Helen, have you got any questions you want to ask? And I was suddenly like, oh gosh, I can't remember what I was going to ask. And so it's perfectly acceptable to write a few points in a notepad that you want to make sure that you've covered off by the end of the interview. That's absolutely fine to do.
Great. Another question that came through earlier was about a group interview setting. And obviously, we're thinking past COVID, and maybe it could be a group Zoom call. And maybe we'll get onto a Zoom interview in a minute. But yeah, a group scenario. I mean, I've been in a couple of group scenario interviews before, and I feel like you try a bit too hard in those sort of situations, and that people are battling for attention.
Absolutely. I mean, this goes back to the teamwork skill that we talked about, and employers will really be looking to see how you interact with other people. If there's someone who's quite quiet in the group, are you bringing them in and still making sure that their ideas are heard? If there's someone quite controlling in the group, it's quite a scary thing to do, but are you able to say, okay, that's great, we love your input, can we now just get everybody else's ideas as well? And that is, I agree, that is quite a scary thing to do sometimes, because some people can be quite overpowering. But try to or maybe propose, like whoever's got the red pen gets to talk or something like that, so that everyone gets, and that will really show your skills at bringing everybody into the group and making sure everyone's ideas are heard. But think about what the challenge is that you've been set in that group interview, because it's usually challenge based. As a group, do something. And think, what are my particular strengths in this area that I really want to show, and make sure that those come out. I know it can be scary, but really try to make sure that you're getting your voice heard, because what employers don't want to see is that you're just happy to sit back and let everybody else do the work. So try to just kind of swallow that fear for the moment and just think about why you're doing it, keep your eyes on the prize effectively, and push through your fear to make sure that your skills are seen in that group setting.
It's really good advice. And should we talk just quickly about virtual interviews? I mean, I know we all currently live in a very different virtual world, and it can be very intimidating to sit there with your camera on. And also potentially quite difficult to read body language.
Yeah.
And I know we spoke a lot about how our body language would come across in an interview. Just any tips on virtual?
For one thing, for me, when we first started our virtual world, I spent quite a lot of time at home in my pajamas, the same way as everybody else did. But I realized quite quickly that actually this didn't really help me to be in a professional frame of mind. And so regardless of whether you're at home or whether you're in front of someone in an interview setting, still try to maintain those same interview hints and tips, if you like. So prepare yourself in exactly the same way as if you were meeting someone face to face. So make sure you've got plenty of time and you've checked that your Zoom is the latest version and that you can connect properly. Have a backup plan. If that doesn't work, how am I going to address it? Make sure you're dressed in the way that you would be if you were meeting someone face to face. Make sure that your family aren't all going to come crashing through the room, or your cat's not going to jump across the front of the laptop. That's my favorite. And make sure all the environment is set up as if you were meeting someone in the same sort of face-to-face context, because that will still show your professionalism, still show that you're committed to this job, whatever else happens. Yes, it takes quite a lot of getting used to seeing your face staring back at you and thinking, oh my goodness, what's happened to my hair? I haven't been able to go to the hairdresser for so long, but practice that with friends, do some calls just so you get used to seeing yourself on the screen and talking to other people. But do everything else as though you were meeting someone face to face, and get yourself in the right state to kind of be a professional in a professional interview.
Yeah, that's good advice. And for working, actually, I think, working from home as well.
Absolutely. I can't work sitting on my bed in my pajama. It doesn't feel right. I don't feel like I'm at work. I feel like I'm kind of just in my free time. So it's for me anyway. I know some people can do it, but for me, it was something that I sort of recognized quite early on, that I can't work like this. I need to work as though I'm going to the office.
Yeah. I think there's some really great tools and tips in what you just presented. So thank you. And if anyone does have any questions, then please do pop in the chat, and you can pop in the chat at a later date and we can come back and check.
Like I say, I'm very happy to pick up with people, if you've got an interview in a couple of months' time or something and you just want to run through some things beforehand, really happy to arrange a time to do that, because I know it can be nerve-wracking, but actually, I want to support you to kind of make it less nerve-wracking and to feel confident as you go into that interview.
That's great, thank you. So anyone that is watching this not live, please do get in touch with your mentor or your hub coordinator to help you. And Helen has kindly offered to give some extra support around that. So I'm just going to double check back if there's any more questions. I think we're good. But I just want to say thank you so much, Helen, for presenting today. And the thing that I found really interesting was key examples of what to ask, because they're the things that I always stumble across, like what should I ask in an interview? And actually there's some really great pointers there, and I think this will be really useful for a lot of the beneficiaries. So thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time.
Absolute pleasure.
And also thanks for being a mentor and supporting transitions. And one day we'll be doing this in the same room. Indeed. So thank you very much. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thank you. If anyone has any questions, do get in touch, and we'll speak soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.